Hello and welcome everybody to this month's webinar, where we are talking all about agentic automation so we can maximize your business value through AI orchestration. The magic is about to start. So today we've got Mr. Jake Rouse. He is going to dazzle you with some amazing demos. And of course, many of you know me, Chris Krause, Senior Vice President of Innovation. Jake, let's keep moving into all the great things we're going to cover today. Our vision for all of you is to really reimagine work to deliver exceptional outcomes. Well, of course, everybody wants to have exceptional outcomes, but this is really critically important when we start thinking about AI and how impactful AI is going to be in your organization. That reimagine work portion means probably from the ground up, you're going to want to take a holistic look at your workflows and probably start fresh on how you want to approach these problems, because you have brand new capabilities that you're going to see in our demonstrations coming up that are going to allow you to do so much more than you ever have before. The limitations of the things in the past, the things you couldn't achieve, are gone. So when you think about reimagining work and getting those exceptional outcomes, you're going to want to think about taking a fresh, holistic approach to your business process. So what we're going to cover, we're going to tell you why agentic automation is really important to an organization, especially with the advancements in the technologies that come out there, and how you can get more efficiency and better outcomes using AI agents. Then we're going to showcase what some of those agents are inside that automation toolbox, so the agentic automation toolbox, and give you some really nice use cases of how you can apply this across all the different industry verticals. And then last, and of course, probably most importantly, how do we do it with good governance, that it scales, and we do it safely? Because you've heard all the horror stories about when it didn't work. We're going to give you some great guidelines on how to make it work in your organization. So let's jump right in. Here's some quick survey stats to kind of guide you down the path of why is this really important. Well, most of you already know by 80%, according to Pricewaterhouse, that you need AI, but you also you don't really know where to begin. So how do I get started? And some of you that have actually taken on your AI initiative, 70% of you failed doing it. And that's because you didn't have clear expectations or clear approach. Maybe you bit off a little too much on what you're trying to do. Don't boil the ocean. Don't eat the elephant all in one bite. You really need to take a look at your use cases and make sure that you're getting the right fit. Because AI is a wonderful, masterful tool, but it has its specific use cases. And that's what we're going to showcase for you today, so that you are no longer going to be a part of that 70% of transformation fails. And you're going to know exactly where to start. So you're not going to be part of that 50%, which means we're going to put you right on the path to success. And I thought this was really interesting that 62% of companies are already starting to use AI agents. Are you part of the 62% that have already taken on an AI agent? Most of you are in the pilot phase, because only 23% actually are scaling to production or using it in a production capacity. And that was right out of the McKinsey study from this year, which I thought was really interesting, because we see that kind of across the board, whether it's the adoption of AI at 80%, but not using it consistently across the board. Maybe they're just using ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot on a real ad hoc basis or a departmental level basis. And so now scaling it up and making it part of your enterprise strategy is really what we're talking about here today. And another couple of interesting stats is how you can improve your work with agentic automation. And what I find fascinating is that trust level. We talk about it all the time. Is, do you really trust an AI bot to do the work of a human? Well, probably not. But 38% of you say you trust AI agents and tasks that are focused on data. So as long as the robot is taking a look at strict data in your confined, guardrailed data analysis, you're like, yep, whatever the agent tells me is probably true. So that's a good thing, but that's growing. And we're also seeing that AI agents are going to reshape the workplace more than the internet. That's pretty astounding, because obviously I grew up with the internet, the birth of the internet. I was there to see it. And it transformed our entire life, not only in business, but also in our personal lives. And they forecast that it's going to be 75% of you believe that it's going to even AI agents will be more impactful in the workplace than the internet. And why would that potentially be true? Because it's going to deliver efficiency supercharge your operational agility. So you're going to see that you can be more agile by these agents and having them learn, which then gives you more time. The question is, what am I going to do with that more time? Probably not going to release a bunch of people. Of course, I might have some people retire, so I don't have to replace them because my agents can help me. But it's also going to unlock new revenue opportunities. And I find that to be the most exciting part of the study, is that companies who have taken advantage of AI agents have actually been able to go into new markets where they previously wouldn't have time to be able to address those new markets, or even offer new services, new product offerings to their clients and new clients to capture more market share as a result of deploying agentic automation. So let's dive in a little bit more. Jake, tell us a little more what's inside this agentic automation toolbox, because it's a pretty cool thing and it adds a ton of value. What does it all mean?
Thanks, Chris. And I think a really interesting question. You hear agents all the time, and it has become a many industry buzzword. And so if we just start with asking, are AI agents human? Simple answer is they're not human yet, but it all kind of depends on how you want to define human at this point in time and what the future definition of human becomes. But really, as we start to get under the cover of what is an agent, there are all kinds of capabilities that we're already familiar with. There's automation, there's AI, agents, which we'll talk about. But really what you've led into is humans. Humans aren't going anywhere as we start to automate processes, and you'll see that as we start going through some of these demos. Really, when all four of these components work together, that's when you have successful agentic automation. So, really simple definition. What's the difference between an agent and a bot? An agent is goal-based. You can act independently. You can make dynamic decisions. Now, we'll get under the cover of how it does that. We're really more familiar with bots or RPA that are rule-based, and they act predictably, and they make decisions based on how they have been told to make decisions, right? Come to a decision point. If it says 1, go right. If it says 2, go left. If it says 3, crash, right? So we're very used to historical RPA, but agents are really unlocking a new capability in how we look at end-to-end automation, and places that we previously got stuck in automation, agents offer an ability to become unstuck.
I love that. In fact, I love the fact that you tone on the robots. You got your robotic voice going there for just a minute. Well done, Jake. Well done.
So I want to introduce you to an agentic worker. And so really, what is an agent? And there's 3 things that you need to think about when you're dealing with an agent. You're going to have inputs, you're going to have grounded thinking, and then you'll have outputs. So really, what does that mean? When we're talking inputs, data is going to come into an agent, right? Be it structured data, be it unstructured data, be it human guidance, right? SOPs, rules, goals. Your step 1 is inputs. Step 2 is a grounded thinking process. And the way I like to simplistically think about this is, many people have used ChatGPT, and you can ask a very general question, right? You can ask a very specific question to a general model. Say, hey, I want you to break down, whatever it may be. You get a very generic answer, and the answer can vary. Ask it once, ask it twice. It's going to be different. But if you create a custom GPT or a custom project in ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever your tool of choice is, you say, I want you to look at only these documents or only this website and answer all the questions based on this. That's what you need to be thinking about with agents, right? So there's inputs, and then you're putting a grounded thinking and that grounded ML model behind the scenes. Yes, it's going to continually learn, and it's storing data, the answers behind the scenes, but it's grounded. You're not asking an agent to be an expert in everything. You're asking an agent to be an expert in one thing. So you get your inputs, you have your agent set up, It's going to answer it based on how you've set it up to answer. And then you get very custom, very specific outputs, right? Go take this action. Provide this level of insight from a summary standpoint, or push it to Chris because I'm not confident that I've answered it correctly. So that's really some of the underpinnings of how an agent works and what that actually means.
I love that, Jake. And especially like in this case, meet Angela, right? When we think about agents and how do I interact with an agent, or where should I start with an agent? Well, when you hire a new employee, how do you engage that new employee, right? And so that new employee could be Angela. Well, you want to make sure you give her all the information to be successful in her job and how to manage each piece of work that's coming at Angela. And so if you treat it like that, and of course, manage it that way long term, because agents, when you set up, it's not a set it and forget it forever. Businesses change, rules change, things change and adapt. So you want to make sure that you're monitoring Angela's performance all along the way. I mean, some companies are actually taking their agents and giving them employee ID numbers, which is really fascinating as this continues to develop, because obviously they want to make sure that those agents are performing optimally over the course of time.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Now, before we start going into demos, I think it's really important to understand some core platforms. Now, a lot of what we're going to be showing and talking about today is UiPath. And UiPath really is the leading agentic AI automation platform out there. The number of capabilities that are inside UiPath are pretty tremendous. How you can stitch together end-to-end automated workflows and embed agents, whether you look at Gartner or Forrester or IDC, it's leading everyone's, it's leading the edge from an agentic automation standpoint from everyone who's analyzing this space. Now that said, right, there are plenty of platforms out there, Highland or Microsoft, that also have agentic capabilities inside them. And we'll talk a little bit more how UiPath and those different platforms can interact together. UiPath, I said it, but just a visual. If you think about UiPath, it's a platform that sits on top of all of the applications that you have in your organization. It has all of the big AI capabilities embedded in it, the ability to work with humans, bring them in the loop, be able to test, be able to monitor. UiPath really is an enterprise platform that comes very pre-configured to be able to interact with all kinds of different applications. Now, one thing that I do want to hit on is the concept of agent mesh, and this is really the next level of intelligent collaboration. What is it? It's a connected network of agents, and those agents can be on all kinds of different platforms. You can have Microsoft agents, you can have Highland agents, UiPath agents, Salesforce agents, right? Many applications are coming out and they're embedding agentic automation into their application. Agent mesh is the ability for all of those to work across numerous systems, numerous agents, and achieve an end-to-end workflow. So, if you think about a task comes in, step one would be who is best suited to take on this task, right? From there, you can push it to a specific agent, and that agent could be in Microsoft, it could be in UiPath, it could be in Salesforce, it could be in Highland. After it gets pushed there, then it's going to execute the task. It'll keep moving it along. You're able to monitor it, and all of these agents, as they are learning individually, the process is learning overall as a whole. So really what you have to think about is agents from every system, they can collaborate. You can push work towards the best suited agent for the job, right? And really an agent shouldn't be thought of as an expert in everything. And then go back to the ChatGPT example, right? If you ask a very specific question, generally you're going to get all kinds of answers. But if you ask a specific question to an expert, right, no different than many of us in our jobs, we have layers of expertise. You ask a specific question, you want to execute a specific task, you need to identify the agent best suited for that job and best configured to be able to execute that job.
Yeah, this is a really important concept, Jake. I really love how you kind of describe that because it is across all platforms. And we see that a lot like in an HR onboarding. So when you make that key decision to hire a new employee, what happens? Well, typically a spread of work has to occur simultaneously because you're involving IT to get you a laptop, your access codes, and your user IDs. You're involving facilities, maybe you need a scan badge and access and parking, and a desk location, a phone potentially. And of course, you've got benefits and payroll and so many people engaged in that one process, usually engaged in multiple systems, that the agent mesh through that one initial action of saying, I'm hiring Jag, is going to instantaneously broadcast many different agents to start executing against those things that need to make Jake's onboarding experience seamless. And that's what we can deliver with Agent Mesh.
Absolutely. All right, Chris, you want to walk us through a few example use cases here?
That would be great, Jake. Well, I just gave you one for HR onboarding, which I absolutely love from an agent mesh perspective because so many different groups are involved in that process. But it also is very useful for resume processing. So when you think of that resume coming in, and Jake hit it on the head as far as, man, get this unstructured content. I have this input coming in, and I want to need to do something with that. And I want to do a deeper analysis. So I receive that resume and then I go through that resume and it's highly unstructured. Everyone's resume looks a little different. Although today with everyone using Chat GPT for their resume, they're starting to look a little similar. No offense, but if you're at home, don't use Chat GPT for your resume. But that agent now is going to go through my resume and be able to review that and take that against a list of job qualifications to make sure that I'm actually qualified for this job before I present it. I'm going to make a decision about that to that hiring manager. So that agent's doing that work for me on the front end, passes only the applicants that actually meet all the job qualifications necessary for me to review and either schedule an interview or perhaps send a notification to them saying, I'm so sorry, you didn't qualify for this job role. So that automation and taking all of that work, as you can receive thousands of resumes per job role, is daunting. So you can save a lot of time very quickly and make sure that it's accurate. Another one, this is really kind of across the board for everyone. This is one of my favorite ones because we all get a lot of email. So automating communications and or case triage, it is oftentimes called, where I want to do communications mining. I want you to take my inbox, my support at company.com, and take all those messages and absolutely read them, take any attachments, take a look at the intent, do a sentiment analysis, and then classify and extract that information and apply it to an automation. So now if I've got some upset customers and they're a validated customer because my agent went and found that, send it on and let's make sure we get those triaged right away. If it's something for a brand new order, let's get that to the order desk so it gets placed so we have a very happy customer, and so on. You get the idea. But all of that ingestion, not having someone staring at an inbox and then reading each one and making a decision and having our agent, our AI agent, be able to do that for us, saves heaps amount of time so that we can address and get the right groups addressing the items that are coming into those boxes. Such a great and fantastic use case that every single organization encounters at some point. And last but certainly not least, everyone's favorite thing to do is testing. Whether we label this to IT, but a lot of times business areas are forced through test too, right? You perform an upgrade to a system, you got a business process in that system, you oftentimes are one tasked with regression testing. So, but we can leverage AI agents by giving it a structured test plan and some data elements. Hey, go do that testing for us in our upgraded environment. Execute and validate the results of those tests. And let's make sure that everything that worked before is still working now. Or if we made an enhancement to that process, great. Here's our test script, execute against that. And then let's have that report out proving that it did the tests and it met those requirements prior to moving it into production, saving just heaps of time, both from our testing people who are oftentimes business users and maybe aren't the best testers, as well as making sure that we've touched all the things that need to occur, because oftentimes people forget when the regression test is so critical as a part of our testing process. So another great example of how an AI agent can streamline our overall process.
One of my
Jake, I know there's
favorite
many
ones.
more examples and demos to see. Tell us more.
Absolutely. Before I move on here, Chris, I think with this testing and regression validation, this isn't a new concept, right? Automation has been in this space for a while. Really over the past year and a half, though, and as agentic automation has become more, actually available, it's no longer a theory, that we hope to obtain. This is real. IT testing and setting up test data and environments, this is all much easier to do than it ever has been, where before you would have to program RPA with loads of business logic to be able to create something. Now you have an agent grounded in what you're trying to do, and it can kick off the next step where it becomes much, much easier to, create all of the test data without line by line coding all of the specific things that you would want to set up in the test data.
That's a great point, Jake. And I know your first one in regression testing was punch cards, putting them into the machine,
yep,
and having go through. So I could definitely relate. I love that example.
All right, now, Chris, we're going to see some actual agents out there in action. So obviously, this one is, we've heard about SNAP benefits in the news right now. I think a really appropriate one to lead off with and just see what's going on behind the scenes. How does this work? So for SNAP benefits, like many processes, you have input. Applications are coming in. You have to process that. And then you're going to take that information, you're going to process it, and then you're going to make a determination and automate the process. So what I want to do here, Chris, is show you how you can, in that workflow, embed agents and actually have it go end to end and automate.
An applicant submits a benefits application. Immediately, UiPath's agentic orchestration powered by Maestro springs into action. The system extracts and validates key information from the application, flagging any missing or incomplete data. This eliminates hours of manual effort and helps ensure accuracy from the start. Next, we see UiPath orchestrating multiple checks at once. An automation verifies the applicant's identity, while another processes a pay stub submitted with the application. Here in Action Center, we see the process pay stub, structured, validated, and ready for further review. At the same time, fraud detection agents are deployed. One agent checks for residency risk, while another validates reported income against official records. In this demo, we see the agent builder view of the residency risk agent in action, showing how agencies can design, monitor, and adapt their fraud detection logic as needed. Once these verifications are complete, UiPath's agentic orchestration shifts to the next step, determining eligibility. Using policy documents and program rules, an autonomous agent generates a recommendation. It combines data, eligibility criteria, and supporting documentation into a clear, evidence-based decision package. Now it's time for human oversight. The caseworker receives the decision package in Action Center with a recommendation that includes citations, rationale, and supporting records. The worker can easily review and approve the recommendation or make adjustments if needed. UiPath immediately triggers the next step, an automation that calculates the appropriate benefit amount based on program rules. Behind the scenes, APIs are used to update applicant records across agency systems, ensuring consistency and accuracy without manual data entry. Finally, the applicant is notified. UiPath generates a personalized email confirming approval and providing benefit details. An applicant's
So that one, Chris, I really like watching that workflow execute for a variety of reasons, but one of them being you can see how many different agents are embedded in a single workflow, right? Processing SNAP benefits is this is a complicated process, many inputs, a lot of knowledge throughout many steps in the process, and this is where embedding agents becomes incredibly tangible. And again, if you think about trying to automate this process just using, old school RPA tactics, right? This would have been extremely difficult, but Now those decision points where you need to look at something and process and make a decision and send it down hey, this needs to be validated, or we're good to keep moving, all of this becomes very, very tangible.
Absolutely. It's a great example.
The next one I want to show here is vendor management. So when we start talking about vendor management and onboarding, again, there's many steps in here. You have the vendor submitting information, and then you have all kinds of processes internally validating. You have different stakeholders in your organization. There's data coming in, extracted, analyzing, making decisions. So this one, I want to walk through this demo and just show you how agentic automation can improve this process.
Every vendor that is completing work as a subcontractor is required to submit a certificate of liability insurance that details out what their insurance policy is. On the left, you will see an example of the minimum requirements that are detailed in the company documents. An example of the minimum requirements can be items such as the minimum limits of liability, which is required by the subcontractor. Contracts analysts have to ensure that the certificate of liability insurance meets all the requirements that are detailed in the company document. In this workflow, we will first connect to any sort of shared repository, in this case, Google Drive, to retrieve the certificate of insurance that the vendor has uploaded. Using uipath document understanding, we will extract the relevant information, such as the limits of liability insurance. We will pass this information to an agent to verify that these limits meet the minimums set forth in our company document. You will also see how an agent can be used to ensure that all the vendors that are in our database meet our limits of liability and are compliant with our policies. We have built an agent that is responsible for ensuring that the minimum requirements on the certificate of insurance meet our company requirements. Once it completes this analysis, it will send a Slack message to the end user detailing its analysis as well. To do so, the agent has access to several tools such as Slack to send a message to the user, as well as uipath document understanding to ensure proper extraction. We have also ensured that the agent has context that is outlined on our company documents as well. Here we have seen an example of an agent run. The agent used the tool to extract the relevant information from the document. Next, it compared against our company documents to determine whether the vendor was meeting the minimum requirements that are set forth. Finally, it sent a message to the user identifying the results of its response. And here we see the output. The agent has correctly identified that this vendor meets the requirements that are set out in our company document.
This is where our vendor management agent transforms the process. The agent continuously monitors our vendor database to flag upcoming document expirations before they become issues, cross-reference existing vendor documentation against our latest compliance requirements, generate targeted outreach to vendors when updates are needed, and provide clear instructions on specific documentation gaps that need addressing. For example, if a vendor's workers' compensation coverage is expiring in 60 days, or if our compliance requirements have changed, the agent will automatically trigger a notification workflow. It analyzes the risk level of each vendor, prioritizes outreach based on business impact, and ensures we maintain continuous compliance rather than discovering issues during annual reviews. While originally the process traversed through the legal department and into the vendor management team, we now have an agent handling all of the tasks itself. Now we will run the agent. Here, the agent is cross-referencing all of the documentation and details of all vendors alike and identifying where the gaps lie in the process. With context from several databases and documents, the agent is able to handle any problems that come its way, while pulling humans into the loop where necessary. As you can see here, the agent has identified an issue and has sent a message to the vendor management team to ensure closure. As you can see here, the agent has identified 3 vendors that do not meet requirements necessary for compliance and has sent an email to the vendor management team notifying them of the compliant and non-compliant vendors.
Every event.
So that being another example here, Chris, where you have numerous AI capabilities in a single process, right? So we saw documents being read there. We saw agents, we saw RPA, we saw a whole bunch of different capabilities all working together to automate this, right? And, vendor management, contract management, all, same umbrella where you have a database, you need to constantly look at that database and look and update those key dates. Depending on all that, you want to do a specific review. Again, where this used to be really, really complicated, right? You have a lot of unstructured content in what we just saw, right? You have rules, but then you have these documents coming through that it's not easy to read. It's not easy to read through any kind of contract or application or in any of these documents. A lot of different elements. But being able to ground these different agents in, here's what I want you to look for, and here's what I want you to check. All of a sudden, you took this process that was prior really, really difficult to understand how automation or AI could really help impact anything to, the majority of it is now maintained automatically.
It really hits on that trust factor that we spoke about earlier, how most people trust when doing data analysis, and these agents were doing just that. Sure. And I love the fact that then it initiated a net new process that could be in Slack or any other system, including like OnBase from a workflow perspective, to obtain the additional information from that vendor for your out of compliant insurance in this particular example. So you can further continue the automation end to end beyond just the vendor management example shown here. We can extend that to other automations as well. And you notice it also crossed multiple teams. So not only are you automating the things relevant directly to you, but you're helping other teams in your organization as well, which I love.
Absolutely. All right. For our healthcare folks out there, prior authorizations, and I've actually background working inside a health system, overseeing a prior authorization team. This is complicated stuff that we're dealing with when we're dealing with prior authorizations and care team notes and payer policies and all kinds of things, a lot of unstructured data. This one's incredibly exciting to be able to look through and understand how can this technology actually impact that process. And again, you're going to look here in the prior authorization process, you have a lot of stakeholders, right? You have your patient access coordinator, you have your clinician. Right now it's called agentic lawyer, but if you think it's the compliance team right now doing this kind of work, and then, maybe this is a behind the scenes, a back office team doing a lot of the validating the information. So here again, information's coming in, it's going to be analyzed, some kind of action is going to be taken. Hopefully you're seeing a theme in many, many processes where you have inputs and then you have doing something with those inputs and you have outputs. Just to open up the possibilities as you're thinking about how can all of this work in my organization. You have inputs in a process and you have outputs in a process. There's a discussion ready to be had. But what I want to do is, again, show how prior authorization can be automated using these capabilities.
This is an example of a patient's medical record, which as you can see is very complex and unstructured in nature, including some handwriting, some printed text, etc. Additionally, you can see payer policy documents for various procedures and various payers. In this case, knee arthroplasty policy document from Aetna, as well as a hip surgery policy document from United Healthcare. The role of this first agent is to retrieve the appropriate payer policy document given a patient's health plan and the service to be provided. This agent is equipped with an index containing multiple policy documents that have been downloaded from various payers that cover various procedures. This agent is also equipped with tools to navigate to the payer portals to ensure that the policy documents being evaluated are the most recent revision. We see the agent running here with an input plan name of Aetna and a knee surgery as a service to be performed. It first looks through its index to identify the correct payer policy document, in this case an Aetna document, and then it uses its appropriate tool to navigate to the Aetna portal and confirm that the most revised version of the knee surgery policy will be evaluated from here on out. Running the agent again, this time for a patient who requires hip surgery and who has United Healthcare as their insurance plan, I can see a similarly appropriate set of outputs with the correct United Healthcare policy document being identified. The role of this next agent is to evaluate the patient's medical record against that previously identified policy document. This agent is equipped with an index containing the patient's medical record. As this agent executes, it's evaluating the payer policy document and finding the points outlining the medical necessity criteria which the patient needs to meet in order for the service to be approved. As you can see in the results, it provides both the criteria that have been satisfied by the patient's medical record, as well as the criteria that have not been satisfied by the patient's medical record. Bringing this all together is an unintended automation, which takes as an input the patient's insurance plan as well as the procedure to be performed, and it then executes the first agent, which coordinates and identifies the correct payer policy document, and then sends that information to the second agent, which can then evaluate that policy against the patient's medical record. Finally, once that second agent is complete and makes its evaluation, those results are presented to a human clinician for review. The clinician can review the results of the agent's analysis alongside of the patient's medical record. As you can see, the clinician can view the criteria which were not satisfied from the patient's medical record, as well as the criteria which were satisfied. For any criteria deemed missing by the agent, the clinician can still manually review the patient's medical record, and if they do find proof that the criteria has been satisfied, they can mark the page number and acknowledge that criteria is no longer being missing. For the criteria which were deemed satisfied by the agent, the clinician can still review those results, using the embedded hyperlinks to identify where in the patient's medical record the agent thought the criteria was satisfied and confirm that that is the case. Any changes the clinician makes during this manual review process will be persisted, such that if the clinician needs additional time to evaluate the missing criteria, they can come back hours or days later without losing any progress before final submission to the payer portal. This is
So again, one of my favorite parts of some of these, looking at a process like prior authorization is numerous stakeholders over a period of time that is not just like, Chris passes it to Jake and Jake has to do it or everything is ended. You saw there, you can pause it and you can come back later, and after you finish it, then it's going to kick to the next step. So you have numerous stakeholders over numerous times, numerous inputs. You're able to summarize complex documents into a usable format or a usable output. And again, human in the loop, you're choosing where you want humans to touch a process to make sure it's as high of an impact touch as possible. And again, going to how much time clinicians spend on trying to scroll and review through notes and policies and saying, well, this is what I actually did. Having that all grounded in the recommendation saying, hey, here's what's missing or here's what is not missing, and being able to very, very easily and visually see both of those, this becomes a game changer in terms of end-to-end automation in high-stakes processes like prior authorization.
Yeah, I love this. I mean, better patient outcomes. We've all had to wait for a prior auth to get done, and it can feel like forever, especially in that moment. So by expediting it with an AI agent, or agents in this case, you can see how impactful that would be to those patients. And I love how it showed going outside your organization and didn't just use content within the corpus of information within you. It went and got the latest information to ensure it was up to date and giving you the most reliable answers. So you weren't making a business decision on outdated information. Fantastic improvement to a process.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe building off of that, an agent, and we saw right there, an agent going out to UHC or Aetna and pulling for the most relevant information. When you're orchestrating these processes, you also get to determine how frequently that happens, right? Maybe you want to do it every single time. I might advise you saying, hey, once a week is probably more than enough. As you go out there, it takes time. There's a level of consumption that any agent is going to use when it's executing a process. So just in this one being an example of, you could determine how frequently you want it to go out or how infrequently you want it to go out, and you can maintain these databases behind the scenes. All of this is extremely easy to customize to meet your business needs.
And your business cost. Love that takeaway, Jake.
Yeah. All right, one more I want to walk through here, just a loan processing demo. In loan processing, we're going to see a very similar pattern. Input comes in, there's a package, there's going to be some screening and validating, and then there's going to be a decision at the end. So we'll go ahead.
Demonstration. We'll start with Emily receiving an email from John. This email will state that John is looking to acquire a property in Miami. You'll have the list price of the property, and then it will also include the most up-to-date income and brokerage statements. As the email gets brought in, Emily is going to go to her UiPath autopilot, and she is going to ask the autopilot to generate a loan profile for John Smith. She's going to state the property that John is looking to purchase, and then the automation is actually going to take this information, understanding the context it has in the background, the different loans the firm can offer, John's financial history, looking at brokerage statements, credit reports. It's going to run that information through the agent to actually generate this loan profile. So in the autopilot window, you can actually see not only if the firm will recommend this loan, but also the reasoning behind it. What the monthly payment, the total interest, the term of the loan is going to look like for John if he pursues this property. To round this micro demonstration out, once Emily has all that information in front of her and she feels confident she can make an intelligent decision, she's going to use her autopilot to actually go ahead and schedule the follow-up meeting with John. You can actually see this being completed in Outlook automatically. Key thing here is we're using the agent to make this initial loan decision. We did not have to involve Peter and the underwriting team at all in this decision process. Our demonstration.
So that one also, a really cool example of how you can customize automation. So right there, we just saw chatbot sitting alongside a human, just like you're interacting with ChatGPT, right? Many of us do that. I think it's about 90% of the workforce has used ChatGPT at some point in the past 12 months. So everyone is conceptually familiar with asking a question to a generative AI platform. But in this case, you're interacting with it, it's grounded, it's passing that information to agents behind the scenes that are then providing very specific answers. And then as you saw there, you can say, all right, schedule me a meeting. And now it's going to go behind the scenes and it will take care of actually scheduling the meeting. So what you're noticing in this one is how close to a human any of these solutions could go if that's what you choose to do. So you don't have to allow an agent or the unattended automation to run behind the scenes without a human. You can control all of it, and you could be giving the prompts to say, now go do this. And, instead of opening up your Outlook and trying to find the time slot that works for you and taking that 5 minutes, right? And while 5 minutes doesn't seem like a lot, when you do it 10 times a day, it adds up really quickly. You have this agent or this agentic automation process working behind the scenes. You're interacting with the chatbot. It's doing everything behind the scenes for you. It just transformed the entire workflow.
I love how that helps build that trust. That's so necessary. And perhaps in the future, that could become an unintended behind the scenes bot agent for you after you've made that trust level happen. So make it interactive at first and then graduate to the unattended agent in the future if that process supports that. So really great example though.
And I think that's a really good point, Chris, is, any of these workflows that you automate, how you start doesn't have to be how you end. And you've seen some of these process orchestrations behind the scenes, and you say, agent, do this. Now behind the scenes, you say, agent, do this, and this becomes automate. Don't get the human in the loop. Just go ahead and pass through. All of these processes can be evolved over time. So this is not a one and done. It's not able to be customized ever again. This is a do it and alter it as it makes sense over time. All right, Chris. So I think what we'll do is just end here talking about how do we do this responsibly. And again, we don't want agents or automation running off behind the scenes, doing whatever it wants. And just a hint, that's not how any of this stuff works, right? Hopefully everyone has taken away here. Any automation is grounded in something, and the best way to do any end-to-end automation is ground decisions in something that makes sense. But really, benefits of well-trained AI, you can increase efficiency and accuracy. There's all the examples that we gave, most of them come with extreme amounts of time savings. When you have 10 people spending half of their day on something and you can embed AI into their process, you can save a tremendous amount of time. By doing that, you can enhance experiences, be that of customers, be that of the staff that's doing the work. I know I love having tedious nonsense taken out of anything that I have to do. So you're enhancing experiences by using well-trained AI. And then there's the human AI collaboration. And I think this is really important that almost any process, humans aren't going away. Humans are being asked to do high impact work within that process so you can do more of it. You can do the process better. This isn't replace humans. This is take away some of that nonsense, that tedious work that humans have to do, and just come into a process where you can use your brain and make those complicated decisions. Now, governance is, in governance, complicated issue. We have to be out there operating responsibly. Now, this is one of the benefits of a platform like UiPath is as we start looking at what do we need to control? We need to control intake. We need to have policy controls. We need to have data privacy. We need to be able to see what's being automated, and what's happening with those steps. We need to be able to keep developing our people, and all of this needs to be moving us in a continued improvement direction. UiPath really has inside the platform capabilities to do all of this, right? To intake and prioritize, orchestrator to make sure that there are guardrails behind what's going on. All of this in a cloud, a secure cloud environment. Having visual dashboards to be able to say what's going on, where is it working, where is it not working. Being able to bring in humans and continually evaluate, hey, now that we have this going, can I get Chris to start to automate some of his own workflows? And then just any of these models, anything that we just showed, the behind the scenes ML models continually improving and becoming more self-sufficient and more confident to the point where when you reach a 95% confidence interval on anything that you're doing, you say, all right, I don't need to pass this to a human anymore because I'm going to nail this. So all of these things you have to be thinking about. A platform like UiPath is embedded with the capabilities to be able to help you manage all of these governance concerns. All right, so Chris, if anyone out there has any questions on where to start, what I'll highly encourage everyone to do is come and talk to us about a blueprint. Blueprint, we help guide you through where are you right now in your journey, what makes sense for a next step. We're all approaching this from a unique starting point, whether we're at the very beginning of using AI or we're highly evolved. What I encourage everyone to do is just reach out and let's talk about how we can help continue moving you down that agentic automation path. So I want to thank everyone for joining us in this webinar today. Hopefully you learned a few things about how agentic automation can impact your organization, some things to think about. I'll leave you with the takeaway of, if you have a process that has inputs and outputs, it's a process prime for automation and specifically agentic automation.
Look forward to working with all of you on these great new agentic automations. Have a great day, everybody.